manifest.
Oh yeah, that one. Yep.
Esto no se queda así.
Because I was the hunted, and now I'm the hunter. It's a big difference. Big difference.
Your manifesto, if that's the one you posted.
Oh yeah, that one. Yep.
Esto.
One more time.
Your manifesto, if that's the one you posted.
Oh yeah, that one. Yep.
Esto.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Hi, everybody. So that was Patrick Crucius with the DPS. If you haven't watched the interrogation video on YouTube, I highly recommend you watch it if you want to understand how DPS is absolutely compromised. We have confirmed that the Texas Department of Public Safety, DPS, the Texas Rangers are absolutely compromised. And this is a warning to the public. Texas DPS is totally compromised, okay? And they pose a security risk and threat to the public, which is, here they are called the Department of Public Safety, and they pose a risk and a threat to public safety. And until they clean it up or totally disband them, I think they need to be totally disbanded. And I'm pro police. I'm pro having these different agencies, but the Department of Public Safety, they are just so susceptible to to compromise, and the level of compromise is a direct threat to public safety and national security. Absolutely. So, and we have been putting that evidence out. I'm not just speaking from my hip or grabbing, words from the air. This is documented. We've documented it, and we have filed it, and then we have posted it publicly. And I just wanted to warn everybody that they are a risk and a threat to your safety. So, I mean, I just can't even tell you what we've been through with them. And they were, of course, the lead. Well, let's get started. Let me do the intro. This is day 2016 since our son, Richard Halliday, was a volunteer, young man, stellar young man that wanted to be CID. He wanted to be a private investigator. He wanted to learn how to do that. So when he's 18, he joined the military. We're a military family. We have over 80 years of service just in our immediate family. And he wanted to join to learn how to become an investigator. Um, so, and of course, his grandfather was ADA. He decided to go ADA, and he really, his plans were to make a career out of it. Um, I didn't want that for him, but that's what he wanted. He joined from Korea, South Korea, because we have family there. We were visiting at the time, and he joined because we have bases there in Korea. That's why if you see South Korea on our site, it's because we're very connected in our family to South Korea. Um, and that's where Richard joined the military, and he became the distinguished honor graduate um, in his class for basic training, and also for his class in advanced individual training. That was at Fort Sill. Now, Fort Sill, my dad and my mother, so Omi and Opie, we call them Omi and Opie, they went to Fort Sill to see Richard graduate because we were in Europe at the time and closing up there. We had been living there. And I asked my dad, could you go to Richard's graduation? We're not going to be able to make it. And my dad was like, no problem. He got in the car with my mom, went over there to Fort Sill, and he was really disappointed with Fort Sill. My dad, retired NCO, was very disappointed in what he saw over there. At Fort Sill. And just to let you know, just recently, the commander at Fort Sill was relieved of duty. It's that bad. Okay. The leadership is just that bad. So President Trump apparently is cleaning that up. So I hope he gets a lot of other flag officers and others before too long, because we have a lot of corrupt flag officers. But Richard graduated number one, and we're so proud of him. And he got $500. So from the military, that was like a bonus, and we said, okay, well, we're going to match that. We matched it. So that was a good day for him. That was a good day. And he was then stationed at Fort Bliss in El Paso. And I told him, I said, I love El Paso. He knew that I was born at White Sands, and that his father and I, we, grew up in that area, grew up on Fort Bliss, Biggs Air Force Base in El Paso, going over the border, and we had just a lot of great memories. That was then. That's before the Mormon faction El Paso cartel took over. Okay, and made an alliance with the Mexican cartel, and to give access to the United States, to El Paso, to the United States, really, to El Paso for visas and licenses and bank accounts and bank loans and property and businesses and permits and licenses for businesses and on and on. And infiltrated our military there, as well as Fort Huachuca, because the Mormon faction El Paso cartel reaches over to Fort Huachuca. Because Fort Huachuca's signal, Fort Huachuca's mind control, Fort Huachuca's intelligence. Fort Huachuca controls the airspace, right? The airspace there, and White Sands, and I'm not saying it just right, but because they are signal and they have a big deal to play in all of that airspace right there at the border. Um, so Richard was in El Paso, and um, the barracks were very, very bad. They were bringing in young girls to compromise the soldiers even during the COVID. They were bringing in young girls for parties. The Command Sergeant Major, Jake Jakovitz, Shaky Jake, because he was shaking about it. He knew it was wrong. He knew it was totally wrong and that it caused the death of our son. But they were bringing in all kinds of stuff, trafficking and everything, and they were bringing in young girls. They had one 14-year-old that was living in the barracks for 4 months. Um, and they would, get videos and everything like that. And if anybody wanted to be a whistleblower, then they had blackmail, they could blackmail them with what they had collected. And I think that that was a small version, a micro version of Epstein. That Epstein had the elites, he um, set them up and could blackmail them. He had his list, right? And it's big, it's super big, millions and millions of pages. Um, but on a micro level, this same playbook inside of our barracks was compromising in so many different ways our young soldiers, which goes against regulations, the standard operating procedure, which we have. We have the barracks standard operating procedures that was given to Richard, and it absolutely, he could have grievances for it not being a place where you'd want to live. And when you are forcibly removed from your barracks room and taken downstairs to the basement room and your life is taken from you, it's not somewhere where you want to live, right? It's not somewhere where you want to live, especially when you're under whistleblower protection. You're a whistleblower, you're reporting on this misconduct, you're reporting on the base's ties to the Walmart mass shooting, which was election interference. Really, they would do anything to prevent President Trump from winning the 2020 election. And they absolutely, because we have confirmed um, with all of our evidence and have documented it and filed it, made videos, made poems, made memes, made everything. We've done that, and you saw right there that the defendant. Serving 90 life sentences is Patrick Crusius, the son of the John of God disciple, John Brian Crusius. You see him right there. And make sure that everything is working. Yeah, thank you, Anicia. So it's all kind of coming together, fitting with Jeffrey Epstein, because Jeffrey Epstein is absolutely tied with John of God and that pipeline, which is tied to Oprah, which Oprah is tied to Beto O'Rourke, and Beto O'Rourke is tied to Santa Fe. And of course, Santa Fe is where, you'd fly in, or, it's just 30-minute drive from Zorro Ranch. Zorro Ranch then borders the north call up of White Sands Missile Range, which that airspace is restricted airspace, which is connected then to Fort Huachuca. And we know that our first casualty affairs officer was asymmetric warfare officer, which is Fort Huachuca. And we know that we caught him participate while using asymmetric warfare tactics against us, and he was our casualty affairs officer. Um, so all of this is very connected, and the Walmart mass shooting, because Richard was reporting ties uh, of, of the base to the Walmart mass shooting, because then they used that whole mass shooting um, narrative. They fabricated it, and they absolutely got people like Ernest Christopher Grant with CNN to come there, right? With Beto O'Rourke to participate in it, with Veronica Escobar, the representative, to participate in it, with, and it's kind of like what's happening right now with this meme that has really nothing to do with President Trump, that they are like, oh, it's racist. It's such a racist thing that you posted up. That was at the end. That was at the end, 1 or 2 seconds of a post that he was posting on something much, much more important, and that is election integrity, election tampering, right? And that was the like little end commercial, whatever, a little end meme from a Lion King meme that a lot of people were superimposed on an animal, right? Um, and whatever. The you can be offended or whatever, but I have posted and documented. Our family has documented um, over and over again uh, much more offensive things like Plenitude Crematorium, like what happened to our son in on base in the arms room on base, and that they misused your funds, taxpayer funds, and it really is just the rhinos, narco politicians that are like with their media lapdogs, but but they should be offended at what's happening in El Paso, right? With the Mormon faction, El Paso cartel. That's what should offend them, what John of God was doing, and that he had a reach into the United States via Oprah, via the Walmart shooter, one of the Walmart shooters, father, John of God disciple, Brian Crucius. That's what they should be offended, because they were, had baby farms and organ harvesting and all the kinds of drugs that they were trafficking. And this pipeline, this Jeffrey Epstein pipeline, with John of God included, then you hear about the Ukrainian government official that just got relieved because he was bringing in dead bodies to drain their water to create dolls for his chest of the dead, because he's a cult, you know, um, and connecting all of this together. Where is the outrage? Where is the outrage for something like that? Because we had Plenitude Crematorium, who was stockpiling corpses while giving families lying to them, taking their money for a cremation and giving them pulverized construction material or animal bones, whatever, pulverized in an urn. Where is their outrage with that? Where is, there's so many more things to be outraged that, why aren't they outraged with all of the failed audits for the Pentagon, while this kind of stuff is going on Fort Bliss, at Fort Huachuca, at the border, where you have fuel evidence indicates big time that they were siphoning fuel from Fort Bliss. This is where their outrage, the rhinos, the narco politicians, that this is where the media should be outraged. They should be outraged not only that Patrick Crusius, his father, was a John of God disciple, which connects him to Beto O'Rourke and Oprah and all of that, okay, that whole occult stuff, but that Patrick Crusius's family had major ties in El Paso, major ties in the judicial and law enforcement system. That's what they should be outraged about, that Michael Mayella, the federal courthouse manager, the exact courthouse where the federal case was being heard there for Patrick Crusius, was managing that case, access to everything, and absolutely could easily tamper with that case. And that his son, Michael Mayella Jr., was in the DA's office with Jaime Esparza and James Bonneau Montoya, right? Easily could, because he was a cyber tech, easily could tamper with the case. But not only that, he was also working because he's so with these computers, I guess they brought him over to the FBI office, or what other, maybe you can decide for yourself, why would he go over to the FBI office as well to have access to that investigation under Agent Todd Petkus, and Agent David Frost working with him. This is the Walmart shooter's brother-in-law working with the very FBI lead investigators for the Walmart shooting, having access to the entire case. And not only that, it doesn't stop there. He also was working for Walmart cybersecurity, the very store where it happened, and he could have access to every video, right? To all the video, so the outrage should be on what happened, because then they used, by fabricating a false narrative, that he just randomly picked El Paso, which is a lie, right? That's a lie. And that he was a white supremacist. Absolutely, he's not. That's also not true. But they wanted to present that fabricated narrative to the public to be a security risk, to cause a security risk. And it did cause a security risk. There's been 2 attempts on President Trump's life. They did that to rile people up, to sow hatred, because they wanted everyone to hate President Trump so that he would lose in the 2020 election. That's absolutely not me saying it. That is the hard evidence saying it. And they would get the likes of Ernest Christopher Grant that would say the most horrible things. He was the media sweetheart. And I'm thinking, there's something is fishy going on with him, because they're ghosting him. They're protecting him. He's been arrested. But why can't we see everything now? They're really protecting him. But he was saying the most horrible lies. They were lies in order to rile people up, using God, using faith, using prayer, and saying the most horrible things. And then going and meeting with Governor Abbott about gun control. It's just, so obvious that what they were doing was very political, was orchestration, was also staging. And so I broke that on find Richard Halliday, right? Justice for Richard Halliday. I broke it that there we have proof now that there was staging at the Walmart mass shooting. And why is this important? Because it shows you that there was a cover up, a mutiny that the deep state had gotten into the system so much that they could launch a mass shooting where real people died brutally. I have the pictures of their brutal murders, and you know that they could do something like this, right? um and Richard was reporting on Fort Bliss's ties to the Walmart mass shooting case, and we know that that's true because of the way they covered up Richard's um, arms room taking of his life in the arms room, covering it up with no expenses spared and um, no following no procedures, no protocol. So now we have what we've discovered and have proof for is not the, oh, it's been staged. No, that was already said because Juan J.T. Torres already said that. He already confessed that the FBI had staged the Walmart mass shooting. Okay? Not that people didn't die, but that they did not secure that scene for over 2 days and they messed with it. They messed with the scene. And we have proof of that. And JT absolutely said that. Okay. And we know that JT had some breakdown problems, that he left the country. And this is where I have to make a correction. The other night I said Costa Rica. It's not, he did not go to Costa Rica. He went to Honduras. Okay. He went to Honduras. And so please, I have to make that correction. Please correct that in your notes if you're taking notes. JT went to Honduras when he left the country. So that's where he's at. So that is, really important information because it wasn't just the Walmart shooting that he was in charge of. He was kind of the go-to guy for this Mormon faction El Paso cartel in alliance with the Mexican cartel. He was like the go-to guy to do their dirty work. And because, the best way I can describe the Mormon faction El Paso cartel is the security team, the security for this Jeffrey Epstein, John of God pipeline. They made sure that it could keep going, that there would be no scrutiny, that there would be no accountability, that they would handle all of that. And that included even violence, okay? That they would silence whistleblowers, and that they did in our son's case, right? And many other cases. JT's name keeps popping up in these cases where they silenced whistleblowers and those that wanted to do the right thing. And after the Walmart shooting of 2019, we have confirmation that he was under investigation for, and I didn't want to say this the other night because I had, I thought it was obstruction, but it's not obstruction. It is official oppression. He was under investigation for official oppression. And so that is, one of the reasons probably for his breakdown and why he left the country. Okay. I don't want to speak for him, but I would think that if I was under investigation for official oppression, and I confessed to the staging that the FBI staged the Walmart shooting that interfered with the election of President Trump, I think, there's motive there to leave the country and go to Honduras. Okay, so I wrote a couple notes down because I just wanted to make sure, because I want to go into another case that's really important, and what we're trying to establish here and let people know is my first statement, that the DPS is compromised, and that they are a threat to public safety. Okay, um, so you have JT, who is the lead Texas Ranger, which is DPS, um, botching the Walmart case, and instead of really doing the right thing, he went to Honduras. Okay, so uh, he was in on another case um, with Cassiano, right? Uh, and he arrested this couple and another person for trying to do the right thing in the independent school district, the Socorro Independent School District. I think it is the Socorro. One of them, his wife works for El Paso ISD, and I'm making sure that I have the right, yeah. And he was the arrestor. Now, there's a lot of talk going on about these corrupt and compromised Texas Rangers that, they will, in order to arrest you, they'll go to, you know, shop around for subpoenas, okay, which is also illegal. All right. So, you know, when you read the Cassianos and they don't even put down an offense, how did, how did they get them arrested? This is, to me, that raises a lot of red flags that this was a retaliation, right? That this was a retaliation. So, and JT was in on that, and I think, um, and also he was the other mass shooting too. Gosh, where they were walking the crime scene, so everything he touched was really rotten, and we absolutely have gotten confirmation that he was the go-to guy, right? For this Mormon faction, El Paso cartel. So, and his partner was Gustavo Sanchez, which is related to Nadal Baim, right? In our son's case. So this is all connected because Nadal Baim, early on in October of 2020, was caught on CCTV footage at a Dollar General, telling a cashier that our son was found by the FBI and that they're dead and that he was dead. And we're being told he's just missing, Um, and he's like, oh yeah, shh, 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 he's dead, right? And he's in Juarez, right? They found his remains in Juarez. And where are his remains then? Because then we called the many other, and I don't want to name them, but we called and contacted other agencies, and they confirmed it, right? They were so taken that we even knew that. They thought that we had been told that, I guess. And yes, and they were very nervous about the whole thing. And of course, we went to the Attorney General's office there in Chihuahua to put in a missing persons um, report, and went to the morgue. Um, and that was tampered with, and that was obstructed. So, the alliance between Chihuahua, Mexico, with this Mormon faction, El Paso cartel, is real. Okay, it is real, and we have documented it over and over and over again with, so much evidence, and that so much evidence that we can come on and tell you that on YouTube and back up everything we're saying. Um, the other, really sad case, so the evidence with Patrick Brookshire, the evidence with Jose Sanchez, the evidence with Gustavo Sanchez confirming that he's cartel, that he's the family to Palestinian arms dealer, Nadal Baim, who's a father-in-law of G3 Lieutenant Colonel Bradford Bugado. How does he get his security clearance? That's another story. But also, family to Manny Chavira, who's absolutely entangled in our son's case and is the really, I guess, quid pro quo chief of police for the El Paso ISD. So, this just shows you that the DPS, especially with Jose Sanchez, with his honey trap, right? That has all these $1 million worth of cars, and a big portion of them are disabled vet license plate. I mean, I think if you own a Lamborghini, you shouldn't put you should be able to pay your license plate. Anyway, so that is letting you know. And if you look through our Facebook and our other websites, you can see that the DPS is totally compromised because, of course, Jose Sanchez is the top cop, right? And for complaints putting in, there's a lot of cover up going on. And one of the biggest cover-ups is this death of Julio Cordero. Julio Cordero, I should back up and tell you about the video that I put on. I always get ahead of myself. But the video that I started with is Patrick Crucius, right? Is a defendant in the Walmart mass shooting, serving 90 life sentences, all right, for being part of it, and he was absolutely part of it, okay? But he's blind. You can see in the video, he's blind. Let me show this to you again. And I don't even know if I'll play the sound. But look at him. He's blind. Okay? He's blind. Without his glasses, he can't see. And what's triggered this with me is President Trump was saying, talking, really, he's the best cheerleader for our military, which he should be. He's the commander in chief. That's his job, to behind the scenes do the court martials and the discipline and everything that needs to be making us have the greatest military. But he said our military is looking so good that a year ago, little over a year ago, nobody wanted to join, which was true. The numbers were so low, right? And he's been cleaning up the military, and now they're getting young people in the military that are just so strong, so wonderful, and with such great eyesight. They are the sharpest shooters, right? They're the sharpest shooters. And I'm like, yeah, but you didn't want to have a Patrick Crucius because Patrick Crucius can't see. Okay, he has a lot of problems. But what that tells you is that so much of this evidence that we have put out, including the Mayellas, which is like overwhelmingly that, the Mayella daughter married Patrick Crucius's brother, um, and, connects the John of God with the Mayellas, right? And we know that they were supporting Beto O'Rourke, um, and that is an Oprah promoting John of God that's connected to Jeffrey Epstein, okay? And we know that Beto O'Rourke lived next door to the owners of Plenitude Crematorium and was employing the family of La Diabla, right? The she devil that was extracting babies from crisis pregnancy young women with illegal C-sections and also harvesting organs and selling those babies as adoptions to homosexual couples in the United States. That's not me, that's DNI, that's Tulsi Gabbard that reported on that. And, national intelligence that reported on all of that. And Martha Mendez Aguilar's family worked alongside Justin Underwood's wife for Beto O'Rourke. So, and we know that Danae Katzen was working for Beto O'Rourke's campaign. We see her in that picture. I have other pictures that I've seen with her with Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke is absolutely connected to all of this. And I know and the DPS withheld that from us. The FBI, of course, withheld that from us. But today, I really want to solidify in everybody that the DPS is compromised and they are a threat to public safety. Okay? They are a threat to public safety. And that is, chilling, absolutely chilling. And when you have a compromised DPS with a compromised DA, which I absolutely want to solidify too, the DA's office there, the 34th Judicial District Attorney's office, is not functioning legally right now because it's been confirmed that James Bonneau Montoya, for lots of reasons, is not a legitimate DA. He's holding that office as a impersonator, a usurper. Okay, he is not a legitimate district attorney. It's compromised. That whole office is compromised. And we have breaking news that the AUSA, John Briggs, and that name, you have to write it down. It is a very important name because he is one of the very few people that has been in that office through all these administrations, okay? Way back with Jaime Esparza, okay? Who Jaime Esparza has a very close relationship with Montoya because we have those pictures, okay? They were in their same little circle groups as he was like a mentor to James Montoya as a young man, okay? When he was in school, going to school with Anthony Acuna. Anthony Acuna, an officer in the El Paso ISD, which, who was there when Julio Cordero was shot, and he's the one that did it. Okay, he's the one that did it. And the DA's office, this is Anthony Acuna with Jaime Esparza, with James Montoya. They are buddies. They have, they went to school together, right? And when this happened to Julio Cordero, which everyone has to know this, is so decorated, right? A decorated FBI agent that was the lead agent on the very successful operation called Poison Pawns. Pawns, Pawns, okay? Poison Pawns. And he had exposed a lot, like Delia Briones' family, of their corruption, okay? And when he retired, he was, once you're an FBI agent, you're always an FBI agent. He was still looking out for all of that stuff and reporting it. So, what does this mean? That Acuna, the lead investigator, was the Texas Ranger Cody Carter, okay? And there are so many just red flags all over the killing of the decorated FBI agent that everyone knew. This is my point. Okay, if you are established in the law enforcement, judicial community in El Paso, you knew who Julio Cordero was, okay? Because he was the lead on the very successful, how many successful anti-corruption operations are there? Julio Cordero, that's who, okay? He was a successful Poison Pawns agent. And so they knew who he was, all right? And there's just so many red flags, especially with this rock thing. It's like a phantom rock, right? A phantom rock that Anthony Acuna thinks is there, doesn't see it, and says, "Oh, he threw it before I did my lethal shooting." And there's nothing right about that case. Nothing right. And yet, where is the outrage? You have outrage for Alex Pretty, outrage for Renee Good. But where is the support for Julio Cordero? Because really, when you look at this case, it is... Look, if you are good friends with James Montoya, who is absolutely protecting the pipeline, absolutely connected to the cartel, absolutely up to no good, he's absolutely an impersonator, absolutely friends with Soroldi, right? Friends with Soroldi, giving him like what? Something with the prostitution. There's no prostitutes in the whole case. It's victims, trafficking victims, soliciting a prostitute, right? And there's no prostitute there. These are trafficked victims from Cuba. And this is how Montoya, there's different rules for his friends, and those friends are connected to this pipeline, to this cartel, this Mormon faction El Paso cartel. And so that he's protecting Acuna, not releasing his name, that would absolutely reveal the conflict of interest, withholding his name like that. And then all of these red flags about what happened at the school, I believe it was Franklin School, something is not right. And for Michael Gonzalez to come into the picture, and Michael Gonzalez he's good friends with Amber Chase, Okay, with Amber Chase. I mean, these are no, I'm sorry. You don't come on and harass us with Amber Chase, right? And and then get involved in this um, death of a hero, a total hero, most decorated FBI agent in El Paso history, with Poison Ponds, um, as his great success and him doing Poison Ponds 2.0. Um, and, so we have the information that we can tell you, so you don't have to do the research for yourself, but of course do it. But we can tell you that they pose, with the DPS being compromised and the DA's office being compromised. And oh yeah, of course Briggs, he's under federal investigation right now. Okay, he's toxic to the courthouse. Okay, he's absolutely toxic. So and for him to be there for so long and to do what he did, take taxpayers' money for filing a frivolous lawsuit, and just, I mean, the fraud is like out of sight everywhere you look. Um, this really shows you that this is a dangerous situation. That with a compromised DA's office and a compromised DPS, um, that's not a good mix. That puts public safety, national security, public security at total risk. And, it really, okay, is this pipeline still going even though Jeffrey Epstein was arrested, even though John of God was arrested? Because, that pipeline, um, of course, the 500,000 children being trafficked on Fort Bliss. So who stepped into their positions to keep this going? And, for Fort Huachuca to be involved, Fort Bliss to be involved, for this pipeline and to get the security of this Mormon faction El Paso cartel to secure them. And, so it's being chipped away with El Mayo's arrest, with El Chapo's arrest, with all of I mean, it's dozens and dozens of Mexican cartel kingpins that are their security. They're their security. They're there to, of course, they traffic and all that stuff, but they're really there to protect while they're doing their criminal trafficking, to protect the main pipeline, of the Jeffrey Epstein, and I think it switched from Zorro Ranch to Fort Bliss. I think that's where the switch went after the arrest. Um, and who knows what's going on in Brazil. And it really explains all the chaos that was going on in Brazil, right? So that is really my main, and I want to make sure, I'm going to look here real quick, because there was so much breaking news. Yeah, the compromised DA's office, the compromised DPS, very important, to get out there to warn everybody. That whole Lion King thing, that is like frivolous to me. When you rate it to the other things that are going on right now, that these rhinos and narco politicians need to be paying attention to, that the media needs to be paying attention to. yeah, that's just a diversion, and I put that up there. I did do a meme drop, so everybody will have it and save all of these memes. And if you have a chance to even copy the post to keep them safe, as evidence, you're my safeguards, right? Absolutely. Um, and it really is very all political in order to keep that pipeline going. And there's motives in that pipeline that are more than just why do they want to compromise the leadership, the right to do this baby trafficking. Of course, all the occult talk is going on, um, and um, the corpses, all that occult talk going on, and then of course the organ harvesting that's all going on, and where are they selling these in the black market? Because I have medical connections, and our family does, and they absolutely have said that there's a lot of organ um, purchasing going on in the black market. And then, of course, um, but what are they doing? And that goes to that whole double ganger thing, right? If he is doing DNA and genetic stuff that is just like he wants to reproduce himself or a certain type of human being or whatever, it really does answer why we're seeing these lookalikes everywhere, right? These lookalikes, they're just double gangers everywhere. And the Charlie Kirk case that's connected to our son's case, that's connected to the Walmart case. And it's just so eerie that they look alike. And we want to know who's their daddy, right? Who's their daddy? Who's their parents? Um, and was Jeffrey Epstein with the elite trying to find some kind of fountain of youth or whatever they were doing? We know that they were experimenting. We know he had loads of money to experiment. We know this was an interest. We know that he was interested in seeding, his girlfriend, his new girlfriend, that I think she was supposed to get like $50 million or whatever. She called him the most purest man. The most purest man, really? I don't think so. But what was she talking about? What was she talking about? So I don't know their experiments, but we know that they were going on, and that needs to be thoroughly investigated. I'm sure, you know, uh, the thing is there's so many cases right now, and we have the infiltration of our agencies, and we have a totally corrupt DPS, and we have a totally corrupt DA's office, that we had an investigator, Peter Melendez, that was reporting, and he's let go, and a couple weeks later he's no more alive. So something is, stinks so bad everywhere. And I'm positive because I know this is all coming out. And if it's all coming out, then someone has answers already. This information would not be coming out to us with our numbers booming if they didn't already have answers. It's kind of like this letter behind us, right, from President Trump. I had to be very careful how I put that up there. I have to highly redact it, just prove that we have it, because there's bad actors out there that would twist and turn and everything. But the letter from President Trump, the letters from President Trump indicates he already has the answers. Okay, the way those letters were written, the level of those letters, the way they were written, he already has the answers. And so as soon as there was the raid on Plenitude Crematorium, then we got the letters. Okay. So he already has answers. This is a vicious negotiation. We are dealing with the Mormon faction El Paso cartel in alliance with the Mexican cartel that, over decades did atrocious things and grew. Okay. And it's not really like one people. It's not like one people of the Mormon faction from the colonies in Chihuahua, It's not one people. Uh, Look, you have Alexander Gerhard Hoffman, who was absolutely targeted, professionally shot. First one, I think. Well, I don't think he was the first one. I think Maria Eugenia Lavarette Roth was the first one. But so he was absolutely targeted. He's a German national, and his family targeted Richard, had Richard's credit cards after he was no more alive, and financial information. This was this German's family, so it's not like a certain people this is not a race thing. This is just about good and evil, and these are evil people that will do anything for status, for trying to find the fountain of youth, or how to live forever, or how to make the perfect person, or make money on baby harvesting, and who knows how many thousands of babies this John of God made. Okay. And mistreated these women. I just can't even, and Oprah would go down there. They absolutely knew this, and the organ harvesting, right? And in order to do that, to protect that pipeline, you have to have weapons and ammunition, and and in order to do this kind of evil, this occult, then you have to have drugs, and you want to drug people so that they, are too drugged out, too hypnotized, then you need Fort Huachuca for the mind control to divert everyone's attention, so that they could carry out these millionaires and billionaires, their little pipeline. And so you have then a drug epidemic, or, the F drug, you have the media and movies and things like that to divert your attention, or to break the culture down, break the family up. You have the promiscuity culture, so they break the family up, and you have, I believe that came from this polygamous Mormon culture in the colonies, because when you're always hunting for a husband or always hunting for a wife, it's not very pretty what comes out of that. Okay, there's not loyalty to your family, and with the siblings and all. I just can't even imagine. It's just, humans are humans, right? Humans are humans. So, and of course, we know that they're very connected with the cartel, and are the cartel, in alliance with the cartel. And and I know that's going to probably make people like, what are you talking about? That Mormon faction is very tied to the colonies in Chihuahua. Okay. Very tied. So, and the LeBarons or the Labarons, remember um, they were targeted. Um, yeah, well, that investigation showed a lot of things. So this is not me taking evidence from the air or whatever. This is hard work, years of work, to bring you, this information so that you can be aware of it and have it, to absolutely have it, because, the next steps uh, that we're taking are so, um, we're there, we are absolutely there to take the next steps, and um, so we want you to have all that information. So, and we're working very hard behind the scenes, and our purpose is absolutely to hold the people accountable that did this to Richard. And those people did a lot of things to other people too, like Julio Cordero, like Cassiano and his wife, and the other person, like all of the victims for years and years. So, and we can't have our taxpayer money going to a military that is participating in this either. And then a courthouse that participates in it, uh, or a DA's office that participates in it, or an El Paso ISD, independent school district police force that participates in it. Yeah, we just can't have that. There's just so many victims, So, yeah, we really appreciate all your sharing. We appreciate um, the followers, people following. We appreciate when you take all the material and post it up on other sites. Absolutely do that, because this is about public safety. It's about um, absolutely accountability for our son, getting our son's remains. And yeah, so thank you so much. And of course, at the end of the day, uh, you always have to say, this is all for the glory of God, all for the glory of God, truly. And I really hesitate to always give God the glory, because we have these impersonators of Christianity that has taken the trust away from those words, right? We can't trust people anymore of what their faith is. They say they're Jewish and they're not. They say they're Christian and they're not. They say they're Muslim and they're not. They say they're, you know, uh, whatever religion, and they're not. They are occultist. They are absolutely their loyalty is to this occult, and so I just want to let you know um, that I have to say that, because I mean it. I mean it. We At the end of the day, this is all for the glory of God, because all knees are going to bow. All knees are going to bow, and my knees the first one to hit. Oh, my stomach will hit the ground. So thank you so much. God bless you, and hope you have a. This is already Sunday. It's almost 2 o'clock in the morning here. Thank you so much. God bless you, and I will be back tomorrow, God willing. Thank you, Anicia. Thank